Once you relinquish your U.S. citizenship or you leave your high tax country that taxes worldwide income to its residents, whether it be Australia, Germany, or whatever country it is, and of course the U.S., you would have to relinquish to get around all taxes. But once you do this, one thing that I want to tell you that you need to take note of is that I would not be setting up offshore corporations, offshore foundations, LLCs and things like this once you leave your high tax country, especially the U.S. I'm talking to a lot of U.S. people here because the lawsuits are so bad in the U.S. I was just reading where there were over 100 million lawsuits that were filed in the U.S. last year. And the U.S. has more lawsuits than all the other countries in the world put together. What you're going to find out is once you leave the U.S., you're not going to have these type of issues that will come up. And due to the fact that a lot of these offshore corporations are being taxed heavily, they're coming out with income taxes, you're going to be throwing yourself into real tax traps. And the only way I would have it is to have it in a business. That way, if that offshore corporation all of a sudden is changing its laws to where now you're going to have to pay taxes, it's real simple. You just set up a new offshore corporation. In fact, you can keep the same name of the company you had. If no one has that same name in another country, and just shift it over and nobody even know the difference. But what you'll do is you'll shift your tax obligations to that new entity. But the problem you run into is if you start putting real estate, you start taking things like equities and you put them in that offshore entity, you run into all kinds of problems. I'm going to give you some examples of some of the problems that you run into. Like I said, you only want to do it with where you're setting up a business, running it through there. Don't put assets, like solid assets like equities or real estate or anything like this in them. And I'm going to tell you why in this video. Also, if you are interested in legally getting your income taxes to zero or how to get a second passport as quick as 45 days, do 3 things. Hit the subscribe button on the right of your screen right here and you get new videos automatically as they come out. And number 2 is I'd like to hear from you. If you got a question or comment, put it below. And number 3 is go to our website, www.citizenshipquickly.com, and just ask for some help. All right, now again, do not put equities or real estate into an offshore entity unless you're living in a high tax liability type country that taxes worldwide income like the U.S., because you do have to worry about tax issues or estate plan, or as far as lawsuit issues if someone tries to sue you. Once you get outside the U.S., you're not going to have those type of issues anymore. Okay. One reason is the U.S. has contingency lawsuits. I think the UK maybe is the only other country in the world that has it, but there is no other country that has contingency lawsuits, and that is where they can go. A person can go out and sue you and not have to pay a dime. The lawyer gets a percentage, 25% outside of court, uses 33% if it goes into court. You get outside the U.S., you don't have that. If someone sues you, they have to. If you lose the lawsuit, you have to pay not only your legal fees, you got to pay their legal fees too. I never see international lawsuits that come down here to St. Kitts. You just never see it. Even someone trying to sue somebody that doesn't even have an offshore corporation, it just doesn't happen. Okay, it's too much trouble. It's you don't have the feeding frenzy that you do in the U.S. because it doesn't cost anything to sue anybody in the U.S. It's like hitting the lottery. You know, it's you find a lawyer that'll take a case, and most people will throw in the towel because they don't want to pay the legal fees. So these are the things that you run into, and this is why there's so many lawsuits in the U.S. Once you get outside, you won't have this. Don't be getting these type of entities to be put in properties and equities and things like this, because what happens is this: it's very expensive to get out of them once that entity changes from no tax to being taxed. This is what's happening a lot with Belize and Nevis offshore corporations. And what it does is it throws you in a tax trap. It's very costly because if you have equities, you've got to sell those equities, then buy them again someplace else, maybe under your name, because now you've gotten rid of the offshore entity. Man, that can be thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, depending on how much money you got. If you got millions of dollars, it can be thousands of dollars to get rid of those equities and then rebuy them again. Another problem you have too is the fact that if you've got real estate and you take the real estate and have to retitle it under your name, most cases you're going to pay a stamp duty or a capital gains tax. And this is why you want to try to avoid that. You know, I've told people this before and they keep forgetting. So and we're in the business of doing that. I could say these, but I'm just telling you, that's not the way you want to go. With the EU now putting pressure with all these different countries. In fact, one thing that I was going to tell you about too is most of the countries in the world now the U.S. doesn't make you do this, but in a lot of the Caribbean countries and Central and South American countries don't require you to do this. But if you start getting a bank account set up in Switzerland, Singapore, places like Austria doesn't require it, but Singapore, Switzerland, Hong Kong, these three areas will not let you wire to third parties anymore, which means that, and most people don't know this until they set up an account. When you set up a corporate account in one of these different jurisdictions, and then you want to wire the funds out to another account, okay, it has to be that same name corporation that you got in Switzerland or Hong Kong or whatever. You can't have a third party that you're wiring to that's different than the starting party. That means if you got a Belize offshore corporation and you're wiring it to yourself, and let's say you own that offshore Belize corporation, okay, and then you're trying to wire the funds to you, you can't do it. Even if you show them proof that you own it, you can't do it. It's got to be the same entity. And the problem with that is if you would have to wire the money to the same Belize name, and then you can wire someplace else back to you. And then if you want to go back in there on a personal account with that original account that you started off with, it's like a circle. You wire from Belize Offshore Corporation to Belize Offshore Corporation and another bank account. And then what you do is you have to shift it over to yourself, and then you have to go back up to that same original bank again with an account under your name, not the Belize Offshore Corporation. They won't take, if you're wiring from your name to that bank that's in Singapore, Switzerland, or in Hong Kong, it's going to have to be the same name. You can't have a different name. Now, you can still do it in the U.S. How long the U.S. will allow it, I don't know. You can do it in the Caribbean. You can do it in a lot of places in the world, but those three main places you can't do it. Austria will allow you to do it, okay? But a lot of countries now are actually, they're actually turning towards this. The reason they're doing it is governments can more easily freeze money, okay? Because if you switch accounts from one corporation to another in a bank, and then you wire it out to that second corporation, it can't be tracked easy, okay? That's why they want you to wire only to the same name that's in that bank account, okay? That way, if they're looking for something coming out of that bank that's from an entity that's they're chasing down, they can easily freeze it. And you're seeing this all across the world. So you need to make sure that if you're going to set up accounts, that you need to be aware that you can't be wiring to third parties. My advice to you is I would be staying away from EU countries anyway, setting bank accounts up. It's worse than the U.S. In fact, even DeGero now used to be able to take everybody. That's one of the biggest discount brokers in the world now. And now they're only taken from select EU countries. Anyway, folks, if you want to learn how to legally get your income taxes to zero, how to get a second passport, as quick as 45 days, do three things. Hit the subscribe button on the right of your screen here. You get new videos automatically, and I would like to hear from you. If you got a question or comment, put it below. And number three is go to our website, www.citizenshipquickly.com, if you want to legally get your income taxes to zero and get a passport as quick as 45 days. We deal with over 100 citizenship by investment and residency by investment countries all over the world. And I look forward to talking to you on the next video. Take care.